50,000 people used to live here. Now it's a ghost town.
That exact sentence is what separates my early childhood from my teenage years. By the time I was 13, Call of Duty had absolutely taken over the world of modern gaming. When I was younger, I generally stuck to Nintendo games and some retro games, and I was very much opposed to things like Call of Duty, actually. However, I could no longer ignore it. My first true exposure to Call of Duty was playing through the campaign of Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare at a friend's house. He was well aware that I was so adamantly against the series, but my curiosity had taken over, and I said, you know what, let me give it a try. The game was surprisingly very fun, and a completely unique experience for me, honestly. I had never played a game where you had to move around with both sticks, one for strafing and one for rotating. Also, regenerating health with any sort of life bar was a new concept for me. The whole thing was enticing, and the Modern Warfare campaign is still a phenomenal experience. Little did I know this game series was about to become a crucial element in getting me through some of the most challenging years of my entire life. After playing the COD 4 campaign, I started to understand why people enjoyed the series so much, and we had not even gotten into the multiplayer yet. The most recent game in the series at this point was Modern Warfare 2, so my friend and I also delved into its campaign a little bit along with some bits of World at War, both of which also offered up some high-octane action and addictive mechanics. When it came time for the next release, Call of Duty Black Ops, I knew I needed to get my own setup. So for Christmas 2010, I received a PlayStation 3 Slim with a number of games. It was a monumental Christmas. Everything was PS3 related that year. The console came with the God of War bundle, and then nearly every relative chipped in at least one game for the collection. I'm talking about games like Little Big Planet, the latest NHL and Madden games, and of course, Call of Duty Black Ops. Knowing that my grandmother went into a local GameStop and purchased my original copy of Black Ops is a hilarious scene to think back on. Sure, the employees at my local store knew who I was, but they certainly had no idea who my grandmom was. To them, she was just some old lady stocking up on the latest and greatest first-person shooter games. I can only imagine the looks that she had gotten if the employees couldn't figure out that this was a Christmas gift, and I wondered if any of them thought that she would go home and play it for herself. To have been a fly on the wall in the store would have been incredible that day. Black Ops was simply magical to play upon its release. The campaign is so gritty and complicated. Especially since people constantly make fun of the Call of Duty player base and it being a bunch of 8-year-olds, this campaign is really intense. But as a 13-year-old, aka part of the problem, I probably didn't understand a whole lot of it looking back. There's so much history here that I knew nothing about at the time. But who cares? Game have gun, and gun is fun. For real though, Black Ops does have an exquisite campaign, and it's always fun to revisit this one. This is arguably the strongest campaign in the entire franchise. It was controversial, it had fun weapons to shoot, the story was complex, and it had many tie-ins to World at War's campaign. It's just incredible. This was also the release that I started to finally dabble into the multiplayer with. I enjoyed it a lot, despite being terrible at it, of course, as we all are when we start. And now Call of Duty was really starting to become a true mainstay in my gaming lineup. When I was just sticking with the campaigns, I played other stuff all the time. Eventually though, Call of Duty became my primary game by a long shot. Here was the problem though with me having a PS3. I was a social outcast in my friend group for having one. All of my friends had Xbox 360s. I had no idea how addicted I would become to the Black Ops multiplayer. Remember, I was mostly exposed to Call of Duty just through the campaigns and was so used to just playing single player games on my own. I had never truly understood the importance of something like Xbox Live. After several months of getting my feet wet with the multiplayer, I realized that the PS3 wasn't really the move anymore, socially at least. And I sold it and swapped everything out for the Xbox 360. So now I was fully embracing the multiplayer grind, and I could do so with all my friends as well. This is when I truly started to understand what COD was all about during its peak years. Sure, the campaigns are great and all the other single player stuff, however the Black Ops 1 multiplayer had me genuinely hooked. Eventually I picked up all the previous CODs as well and started delving into their multiplayers. I simply could not get enough COD.
You like Krabby Patties, don't you, Squidward?
Now, I never got so much time on World at War's multiplayer, unfortunately, because its multiplayer was hacked and full of cheaters very early in the Black Ops lifecycle. However, I have a ton of memories playing Modern Warfare 2, and even some of COD 4. Yeah, so don't get me wrong and don't get it twisted. Though I started with Black Ops 1, which is a little bit late in the prime, honestly, I still played an immense amount of Modern Warfare 2 online. I may have missed the exact year that it was the current game, but I still caught it when it was at least the latest Infinity Ward game. At this point, summer 2011 was right around the corner, and the only two games on my radar anymore were Black Ops 1 and Modern Warfare 2. I worked my way tirelessly through the Black Ops 1 Prestige ranks. At some point, I told myself, I'm gonna make it to 15th Prestige. I have countless amazing memories staying up late on summer nights, playing solo for the most part because you couldn't socialize if it was too late, you wake your parents up, grinding out the ranks in Black Ops. Every time that I hit a new prestige, it was like somebody took a fucking syringe of dopamine and just stabbed it right into my veins. Eventually, yes, I did accomplish my goal of hitting the max rank. Sadly, it's on an old account that I no longer have access to. Once I distanced myself from the series and Xbox in general, I abandoned my original account with all my COD achievements on it, but then got back into Xbox later and made a new account, so whatever. I have no proof to show you that I actually did it, but just take my word for it. The account that I play on now, again, is something I made a few years down the line, and I've only played a few more modern games on it here and there, but look, I did it, okay? I had like 22 days worth of playtime on Black Ops 1 by the end of its life. As the summer drew to a close, we all knew that the next installment in the series was lurking. Modern Warfare 3, though, is when things really started to shift in my life. In October of 2011, just a month away from the release of Modern Warfare 3, my mother received a life-changing medical diagnosis. Moments before I was told to come downstairs for the news to be broken to us, I was of course playing Modern Warfare 2 in my room. Call of Duty had taken over my life already. Summer 2011 really sealed the deal on that. However, now it was going to become my escape. Despite the major news with my family, Modern Warfare 3 was still on the horizon, and thank goodness for that. I could surround myself in hype for the game instead of thinking about everything happening around me. Leading up to the game, this limited edition controller was released, and it has been my primary controller on the 360 for a long time. The game was released on November 8th, 2011, and the next day was actually an election day. Since I went to a public school, I had the day off. Because of the day off, I was able to convince my dad to take me to my first midnight launch for a new game ever. Naturally, I was not the only one of my friends at this launch. The guy who introduced me to the series with the COD 4 campaign was also there, and several others. We all got home, hopped on Xbox Live, and played our first matches of MW3 all together. All while, of course, keeping the rage to a minimum so as to not wake our parents up. Despite a lot of good memories, Modern Warfare 3 is a very eerie game for me to look back on. With everything going on at home, such as my mother going through multiple rounds of surgery and all the stress that followed in its wake, MW3 was what kept me distracted. I continued my extremely late nights playing the game. However, unlike the Black Ops 1 days, the peaceful atmosphere of a late summer night had disappeared. The winter had taken over, nights were bitter cold, and I was playing with a constant looming anxiety about my home life. The game now served a purpose outside of just being dumb fun. Now it felt like I needed to be playing the game to keep myself grounded in reality. For Christmas that year, I wanted to be a real gamer, so I asked for a Turtle Beach gaming headset. Sure, that helped me hear footsteps and maybe snag a few extra kills or something, but what it really did was further isolate me from my surroundings. At 14 years old, I had no idea that I was subconsciously putting myself deeper and deeper into an environment that got me away from my home life. But looking back, it was absolutely done with an ulterior motive, outside of just hearing the game a little better. Now my long nights of MW3 were completely closed off. If you walked by my room in the summer of 2011, you could hear the TV playing the sounds of Black Ops 1 multiplayer, at least to some extent, even in the dead of night. Sure, I'd have it on quietly to not wake people up, but it was still out there. Obviously at night I wouldn't scream at the game. So the only sign of me possibly being awake was the faint glow of the TV in the little space underneath my doorway. With a headset, you can hear the game's multiplayer menu theme between matches extremely well compared to with just a regular TV speaker. After every game, you are met with this song. I constantly associate the song to this troubling time in my family, and hearing it immediately generates an anxiety-riddled nostalgic feeling. Yes, I am nostalgic for the theme. I miss being a kid, even in difficult times, but it's paired with the uneasy reality of how challenging things were this year. If we were to compare the multiplayer themes between Black Ops 1 and Modern Warfare 3, you will notice how different they are in tone, and how much they complement where I was in life. Black Ops 1 is a more subtle, comfortable song. Hearing this theme generates immense nostalgia for some of the final normal days of my childhood. However, the Modern Warfare 3 theme is immediately more tense, loud, and on edge. Which is exactly how I felt about life during this game's prime. Here's the other major problem with Modern Warfare 3. Of the classic era, which I define being COD 4 through Black Ops 2, Modern Warfare 3 is my least favorite. The game was very harshly criticized for recycling a lot of assets from Modern Warfare 2 and overall lacking in originality compared to the jump from COD 4 to Modern Warfare 2. That is also because Vince Zampella did not work on this game. May he rest in peace. The multiplayer was insanely frustrating. Now, of course, hindsight is 2020, and we are all nostalgic for what we had because there have been so many COD games that were way worse than this one now. However, at the time, MW3 felt like a huge disappointment in a lot of ways. Did I still play the hell out of it? Absolutely. But the excitement wore off quickly, and most of my sessions were just filled with so much anger. My addiction to Call of Duty ran so deep though that when I was not playing the game, I was watching other people play it, and that also helped with how infuriating the game was. There were so many COD YouTubers that I subscribed to back in the day, it was unreal. Half of them I don't even remember, but the memorable ones were the Mark of J, Chase Money, and 402 Thunder 402, who apparently is still like fairly active in the scene, and I mean props to him for putting up with Black Ops 7, I've heard it's terrible. The game was serving a purpose outside of just being fun though, it truly was my escape from reality. Now you might be asking, why not just switch to something like Battlefield? And yes, in time I did try out nearly every AAA game at the time. As a matter of fact, my grandmother once again bought me another violent video game for Christmas. This time it was Gears of War 3, which is another game that I have some solid childhood memories of, especially the Horde mode. I played other stuff, but it was always COD that I came back to. However, once the frustration of MW3 was too much, I simply just went back to Black Ops 1, and even MW2 still remained playable for a long time. Black Ops 1 was my home. It was the game that I became obsessed with multiplayer over. Sometime in spring of 2011, I had pretty much given up on Modern Warfare 3 entirely and was back to focusing on my ranks in Black Ops 1. I had not yet completed all 15 prestiges, and so that goal was back in my mind as my distraction from my home life. And I will just make a disclaimer here that as I start to delve into some things regarding my mom's health, she has recovered from what she was going through at this time, and everything's better. That's part of why I'm okay with sharing these kinds of things on the internet, because this was all so long ago now, and things have been so much better since then. So just a heads up there. The rest of the 2011 school year came and went. My mother's health was still in question as she went in for multiple other surgeries that year. The strain on our family was immense. I cannot fully depict things for you for multiple reasons. One, I was genuinely so invested in Call of Duty that I'm not even fully aware of kind of how bad things really were at some points. And well, I also don't want to give out too many details of a very personal situation on the internet, but it's important to give you at least some context. On July 5th, 2012, my parents began to separate. If you can't imagine, that year's 4th of July party was not that fun. And again, just another disclaimer about my parents' divorce here. You're not going to hear me take anybody's side or really give a whole lot of details on it. Just know that they did separate during this time when I was really invested in Call of Duty, and it's just another integral part of the story. During the summer months, I had moved my Xbox 360 from my bedroom down to the basement. We were scheduled to get some renovations done for waterproofing from flooding, and I was able to turn the area into a very nice game room setup in the following years. In the summer, it was nice and cool down in the basement, nobody bothered me, I could lock myself away just as I did in the winter up in my bedroom, but I had an even bigger and better space now. I could often be found going through the entire discographies of bands like Linkin Park, Breaking Benjamin, and 3 Days Grace while playing Call of Duty for hours and hours and hours. I often did forget to eat during these times as well, and frankly I was riddled with untreated and undiagnosed symptoms of an eating disorder during this whole ordeal as well. Days would go by where all I would eat is like instant rice and maybe some other snacks here and there out of our cabinets. The game was distracting enough to where I didn't feel hungry for hours. Now that wasn't safe at all. I'm not condoning or encouraging that kind of behavior, but it is what I was going through. The summer progressed very, very slowly. Remember how excited you were for summer breaks as a kid? Well, this was the first summer that I actually kind of wanted to hurry up and end. That being said, I was still pretty nervous about going back to school and all. I was set to go into my freshman year of high school, so that meant a new building, new teachers, and entirely new schedules. It was a lot of change, despite it being with mostly all my friends that I still grew up with. Sometime during the summer, I did finally accomplish my goal of hitting that 15th Prestige level 50 on the original Black Ops. It came just in time, because on August 7th, 2012, the multiplayer trailer for Black Ops 2 was released. There was a whole video event covering and breaking down specifically the multiplayer in the next installment of my favorite franchise. MW3 felt like a distant memory at this point. I had given up on the game so many months ago. Now it was time for my preferred developer, Treyarch, to have their next crack at it, and I was beyond excited. I would say that Black Ops 2 was my most anticipated game of all time by an absolute long shot. No game will top my hype levels for it, not even the original Titanfall or any of the other COD releases. At this point, I was following any piece of Black Ops 2 news that came out and thinking about all the possibilities that I could do with that cool new Pick 10 system in multiplayer. It truly was an exciting time to be a fan of the series. A lot of the complaints and concerns from the previous entries that frustrated us immensely felt like they were being addressed. The Pick 10 system was so innovative and refreshing, and it added a lot to create a class. Several balance concerns were also finally being heard. We would no longer have stupid shit like Dead Man's Hand where you could just pull out C4 on some dude who was 4 kills away from the Moab. Though I was anticipating the end of summer, I had some big changes ahead of me with the start of high school. The classes were harder, the stakes were higher, and I had to be significantly more independent now with my parents going through their divorce. In my last year of middle school, I was an average student, maybe slightly above average in some areas, but like not great. However, high school changed that, and I focused a lot on my academics in the wake of my parents' divorce. It was yet another distraction that kept me grounded in reality with my peers. When we weren't playing COD together, I would often have friends over to collaborate and work on homework assignments together or just do some other work here and there. It kept me feeling like a normal kid despite everything around me. Focusing on doing well in school certainly came with an ulterior motive, though, trust me. I wasn't just some kind of nerd out here who decided to become really good at school or something. Now, if you remember, in the year prior, going to the midnight release of Modern Warfare 3 was no problem because we had the next day off for Election Day. However, this year, I didn't get so lucky. The release was pushed a week forward, and so it was the Tuesday after Election Day this time. And I knew that I needed to convince my dad to let me go to a midnight release on a school night now. The best way to do that was to keep my grades up and be on my absolute best behavior. I had built up so many good habits as an academic at this point, all just to convince my dad to take me to go get a video game, that they actually stuck with me forever. Generally, I did very well throughout the rest of high school, and I typically equate the foundations of my success to this time period. I locked in for a good solid 3 months to ensure I could get the game, and I just kind of kept it going forever then. It's moments of reflections like this where I am really thankful that I had motivators like Call of Duty in my life. The game quite literally kept me out of trouble as I was very much unsupervised during this period. I could have potentially gotten myself into a lot of bad situations, but instead I was just at home playing video games and doing homework. Lo and behold, my plan worked. The night of November 12th, 2012, my dad voluntarily drove myself and 2 of my friends to our local GameStop for the midnight release of Black Ops 2. This time I wasn't messing around and I pre-ordered the Hardened Edition. So I got a steelbook and some useless coins and shit to go along with it. And you know, I mean, I guess it comes in a pretty cool box too, right? Like it looks decent on the shelf and everything and it's nostalgic, so who cares? But whatever, I got the Hardened Edition that time because I felt like I should pay $80 for Black Ops. My memories of waiting in line for Black Ops 2 are extremely clear. We were given posters and patches for being early, and we had amazing time standing out in the freezing cold, waiting for the clock to finally hit midnight.
Freezing my balls off out here, man.
Midnight launches were special, and it's a huge shame that they don't exist anymore, really. I think a lot of people have shared nostalgia for at least one specific midnight release. There are so many videos that I've seen out there of people delving into their memories at a certain launch. For me, the MW3 and Black Ops 2 midnight launches are unforgettable childhood memories that will stick with me forever. They were almost like a mini convention. You're there with a bunch of people who are all excited about the same thing. You wait in line and shoot the shit with people who you don't really know, but you all have something in common. If there is one single day that I could go back to and relive, it's the day that Black Ops 2 was released. If we're on the technicality here of it being one day, then it would start the moment the clock struck midnight and it became November 13th, 2012, and I would go and relive all the moments from the second the game came out. My best friend Dylan was there with me that night. Here's some of his memories from the Black Ops 2 midnight launch.
So it's 2012, and I'm waiting at home for Andrew to come pick me up with his dad to go to GameStop. And I was watching this movie called Buried, I think, with Ryan Reynolds, and it was terrible. And I was like in such a weird headspace after that. I was like, man, that sucked. But then Andrew came pick me up, and I was sitting in the car with him, just like, I just watched this crazy movie. And he was like, forget about that. We're about to go play Call of Duty Black Ops 2. And I was like, oh my God, dude, you're so right. We got to lock in. So we get to the GameStop, and we're hanging out in line, and everyone is just like so hype. You have people in like their different Call of Duty shirts. There was different swag all over the place. It was honestly just like the best energy ever. I've never seen so many people at my local GameStop. And we got in that store, and we picked up our game, and we rushed home as fast as we could to get right on and play. And you would have thought that like the whole internet was on this server because everyone's playing. And it's really trippy too, because when you first start playing like a new release like this, everyone's at level 1, you know, no one's past level 1 yet. So it was kind of cool that we were all starting at ground zero, and it felt like something that's never happened before, and it truly was. I feel like there won't ever be a moment like this in like gaming history, at least for a long time, that will be as momentous for me or for like the gaming community on Xbox or PlayStation or anything like that. But just looking back, it's such a fond memory to me, and the fact that Andrew holds it so close to him is really important to me as well. So I'm glad that we get to share that memory together as friends. And I'll never forget it. Best Call of Duty ever. Blops 2 for life.
Once we got the game, we headed home, dropping my friends off at their houses in the process, and then I went back to mine. Now here's a question for the audience. Do you think that we went right to bed because we had to go to school tomorrow? Do you think that we did the right thing and we were on our best behavior and got some shut-eye right before a big day of reading Homer's Odyssey and learning about the French Revolution? Absolutely not! No, my basement setup was complete at this point. The waterproofing had been done. I got a new TV for my birthday that year, and everything was in place for me to stay up late as hell and not wake up anybody else in the house. Did my friends also stay up? Of course. We hopped right into an Xbox Live party, and after I taped my poster up to the wall, and we stayed up until about 3 a.m. playing the game. In actuality, I probably could have stayed up the entire night, but did decide to be a somewhat decent student and get some shut-eye and go to bed. The next day, or technically the same day, but at school, I have a distinct memory of a kid in my English class being all upset that he wasn't able to get the game yet, and he was mad jealous of my friends and me for going at midnight. I was so tired that I could like barely stand, but I felt awesome knowing that I had a cool dad who took me to a midnight launch. The jealous kid was making such a fuss about it that our English teacher actually asked us what was going on, and we had to explain to her about how excited we all were for Black Ops 2. Black Ops 2 ended up being a significantly more pleasant experience than Modern Warfare 3 overall. Did I still lose my mind at the game all the time? Absolutely, but that's just the nature of Call of Duty and multiplayer in general. However, there was a lot more love and care put into Black Ops 2 than Modern Warfare 3. Of course, it was never going to live up to my expectations. It was my most hyped game of all time. However, it's still one of the finer multiplayer experiences that I've had. I also never really got into the game's campaign at this point. Outside of one Friday night where I remember giving the first mission a shot and then just deciding to switch back to multiplayer, it never really gripped me. Eventually, years and years later, I would go back to it and finish it. Looking back on how I got into the series with the COD 4 campaign, my interests had completely shifted. The game now was truly a multiplayer experience for me, and I had begun to stop caring about the other elements of the game. Sometime around summer of 2013, towards the end of my freshman year of high school, I pretty much called it complete. I made it all the way up to 10th Prestige, and I had my fill. Once I got to 10th Prestige in Black Ops 2, my interest in multiplayer began to fade. I mean, you've basically done it all. With my desire to play the other modes also gone, there wasn't really anything left, and I was moving on from the franchise. The game had run its course and served its purpose. Despite being a short run in the grand scheme, the journey was absolutely incredible. After the midnight launch, there were a number of double XP weekends that I sunk some immense amounts of time into. There, of course, also was Christmas Day, where all the noobs get the game and you can whoop their ass because you've been playing for nearly 2 months already. And then there's all the memories of having friends over and playing multiplayer together for hours on end over a weekend. When I say that, we didn't just have like one person over doing split screen. No, I'm talking about multiple people over, all bringing their Xboxes and their TVs. We set it up in my basement so we don't have to do any stupid split screening, and we're on the grind just for hours and hours and hours. It was basically having the Xbox Live Party in your house. Despite COD being a franchise that gets shit on constantly, and it absolutely being a shell of itself now, those memories are highly cherished for me. We had no idea that we would later become so nostalgic for it all. We were just having fun in the moment. Things started to improve at this point in my family life as well. My parents' divorce was progressing and a new normal was forming. What I used to call my parents' house was now my dad's house, and the next chapter was here. We also introduced a new member to our family, our German Shepherd puppy. She's actually still alive today at a young, spry 13 years old. In the years coming, Call of Duty was still something that I loosely paid attention to in the gaming world, but had no interest in buying. I never bought Ghosts when it was new. Instead, I was excited for games like Titanfall, and then I eventually branched out into more genres, mainly RPGs and platformers for the rest of my time in high school. I wouldn't revisit a Call of Duty game until a fateful night during my first winter break in college, which brings us to our next segment. Once I hit college, things shifted again. The first semester was a big adjustment, and I certainly got rocked by some of the courses that I had took. Winter break couldn't come soon enough that year. Funny enough, I had actually acquired a PS3 again at some point, so things really had come like full circle when it comes to my introduction into the COD series originally. I don't even truly remember how I got that other PS3. I must have just gotten bored and snagged a used one for the sake of playing Little Big Planet and maybe some other RPGs. The PS3 was already old at this point. One night I was really craving a shooter though. I had a copy of Killzone 2 for the PS3, but my goodness, that game plays and feels like absolute dog shit. I get it that it was intentional to make the player feel like they weigh 1,000,000 pounds carrying all the gear, but it is not fun. No, what I really craved for the first time in years was Call of Duty. I was impulsive. I needed to play the game right now. So I hopped onto the PlayStation Store and there was MW2 for a full $20 for the download. Keep in mind the physical disc was like $3 because nobody was nostalgic for these games yet and nobody cared about them. Despite the steep price, I said screw it and I bought it. I needed to play the game, just like I needed it back in 2011. Upon firing up the campaign and hearing this for the first time in years,
It's the FNG, sir. What the hell kind of name is Soap?
I was struck with the most overpowering sense of nostalgia that I had ever felt in my life. Since I was only 19, I hadn't really experienced that sensation before. It was overwhelming, and I recall shedding one manly tear while watching the clips from Call of Duty 4 playing in the background of that intense Hans Zimmer introduction. I was rather ballsy and decided to go for completing the game on Veteran. Despite a near 4-year hiatus from the series as a whole, there are some things that you just don't forget. Certain missions stand out differently on the Veteran campaign. Takedown is a huge example. I actually have a whole video about that mission and how much I enjoy it. Eventually, I was able to complete the game on Veteran and got an immense level of satisfaction from it. However, we all know what I really wanted to do. I couldn't hold my curiosity back. I fired up multiplayer. Was it hacked? Yes, at least I'm pretty sure. But not every lobby's hacked. I have some memories of dabbling with the Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer in 2016, and it's still being fine. However, MW2 was not the only game in the series that I was curious about in modern times. The final gasp of air that I got out of playing a Prime-era Call of Duty against real people was on an unlikely candidate. The Wii U. I'm not sure how many people know about this, but Black Ops 2 on the Wii U was at least somewhat viable for multiplayer with limited cheaters well past its prime. When I went back on my nostalgia kick following my replay of Modern Warfare 2, I acquired a copy of Black Ops 2 for the Wii U. To my surprise, there were still around 750 to 1,000 players online at this point, and you could even find matches outside of Team Deathmatch. I ran the high of Black Ops 2 on Wii U for a couple of years, mostly during breaks when I was home in college. My last hurrah with the game was somewhere around early 2020. Probably the most prominent channel featuring Black Ops 2 on the Wii U is Icon Boy, whose last video was him playing the game as late as 2023, over 10 years after the Black Ops 2 initial release. Sadly, nearly every single online feature for the Wii U has been disabled now, and it's completely dead. There's all kinds of videos out there talking about ways to play Black Ops 2 multiplayer on clients like Plutonium. I am aware of these things. And supposedly the games were patched on Xbox to work better, but to my understanding, that did not stop the cheaters. I've absolutely still heard accounts of people getting their information exposed and such on current Modern Warfare 2 servers, so I'm not touching it. Also, it's not the same as it once was, and it never will be, so I'm not chomping at the bit to fire up the game on Xbox 360. I don't just crave Black Ops 2 multiplayer to be served to me in any manner. I crave it served to me in the peak times of 2013, and to truly get the experience, I would need a time machine. Playing Black Ops 2 multiplayer today would be like having a delicious steak, but it's served to me alone in a dingy alley. Black Ops 2 in its prime was like having the same steak, but served in a fancy restaurant where everybody's talking about how great the menu is. In the years following my nostalgia-driven revisits to the series, I've had some stints with the more recent Call of Duty entries. My college roommates and I got nostalgia-baited by COD World War II when it was released in 2017, and then my most recent purchase of a newer COD was Black Ops Cold War, which is already an older game now. Again, the game served its purpose. I put a solid amount of time into the multiplayer, and the campaign is magnificent. Since then, there have been very few AAA new releases that I have cared about. I've since been riding the nostalgia of childhood games and posting about it on this channel. The older CODs are now old enough to where I just kind of loop them in with all my childhood games like Mario Sunshine and the Mega Man games and Chrono Trigger. Call of Duty's also in there with those, despite them being very different. Ultimately, we had no idea how special these games would become to us as adults. We were just having fun as kids. I know this was an extremely rose-tinted retrospective on COD, but we were also brutally critical of the game. Mind you, nearly everybody, including myself, stopped playing them at some point, and we got fed up with the series. Though the prime of Call of Duty was just a brief blip in time, it's one that I'm incredibly glad that I got to experience. When it comes to game preservation, sharing stories is an incredibly important aspect. My biggest gaming story to share is the 3-ish years that I spent in the prime of the Call of Duty franchise.